On January 26th, reporters at The Hill reported House Republicans are planning their first hearings on the Biden administration's COVID-19 response, summoning top federal health officials to Congress to testify in the coming weeks. According to this report, the House Committee on Energy and Commerce is planning to interrogate officials from federal agencies such as the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the Food and Drug Administration, the National Institutes of Health, NIH, and the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response, ASPR, according to Bloomberg. The hearing is set for February 8th. Nothing in Washington occurs without fanfare and spectacle, especially in a contentious identity politic. And when February 8th, for those just tuning in, rolled around to inform those who might find some fascination with what has become for many Americans their favorite pastime, and for others a devoted religion, in a politics to which apparently no one is immune. It was the Wall Street Journal who brought the story. More than 3 years after the start of the global pandemic, there has yet to be a comprehensive forensic investigation into its origins. With more than 1 million Americans dead from COVID-19 and an estimated 15 million dead worldwide, that's inexcusable. While Chinese obfuscation and misdirection is chiefly to blame for the lack of understanding of how the novel coronavirus swept the globe, the U.S. could do far more to get to the bottom of what happened. Congress should hold hearings to establish a bipartisan COVID-19 commission along the lines of the 9/11 Commission. And measuring up the competition for space in the marketplace of ideas, engaged in elevated discussion, as all educated and enlightened are. The Wall Street Journal provided the starting lineup, as if a game was being played at National Stadium, explaining crisply, clearly, and succinctly in classic AP style book journalistic expression, which is not quite Strunken White or Little Brown. Bottom line up front, inverted pyramid outline format. Why was there a pandemic? There are two competing hypotheses. Some believe the novel coronavirus probably escaped from a laboratory in Wuhan. Boo hiss, boo hiss. Others, championing science, maintain the virus first jumped to people from caged animals at a Wuhan seafood market, and the crowd goes wild. Why does the answer even matter for what the Washington Post has described as the first rough draft of history, especially if, as most surveys report, pandemic is in the rearview mirror for most Americans, even Democrats who had touted the government public health response. Life goes on, and most Americans are now ready to return to their carefree existence and move on with their lives. Return to those days of carpe diem. But at least to litigators, and for those who follow the actions in the courts, especially for those whose passion for politics, as they say, is generated by environmental issues. Save the damn whales. Watch out for global climate change. All of those environmental things. The answer goes all the way back in history to 1868 in a decision handed down not in American but in British courts of the Royal Crown for all of our Anglophiles, which had stated the rule that if the defendant, not stopping at the natural use of their clothes, had desired to use it for any other purpose, which I may term as non-natural use, for the purpose of introducing into the clothes that which in its natural condition was not in or upon it, for the purpose of introducing water either above or below in quantities and in a manner not the result of any work or operation on or under land. And if in consequence of their doing so, or in consequence of any imperfection in the mode of their doing so, the water came to escape and to pass off into the clothes of the plaintiff, then it appears, at least to me, that which the defendants were doing, they were doing at their own peril. And if in the course of their doing it, the evil arose to which I have referred, the evil, namely, of the escape of the water, and its passing away to the clothes of the plaintiff and injuring the plaintiff, then for the consequence of that, in my opinion, the defendants would be liable. I rest my case. There are a few places, particular to the virus origins question, that at least coincidentally arise in this case quotation, rather dramatically portrayed, like non-natural uses, which would be akin to the allegations of the virus that had found origins not through a natural zoonotic evolution, but rather through a quite non-natural introduction to the land, as it were, cultivated or manipulated in a defense research laboratory engaged perhaps in classified dual-use research of concern, DURC, DIRC. And of course, there is the phrase most aptly coined regarding government research scientists that even the intelligence community, on May 26, 2021, the president had suggested to have assigned a low to moderate risk of permitting dangerous biohazards to, escape. Deriving, according to Fletcher v. Rylands, consequences, damages, harm, and under the rule stated in Fletcher v. Rylands, decided in 1868, in Great Britain. When a defendant brings an unnatural condition upon the land, he or she is therefore held strictly liable for at least all reasonably foreseeable harms that may arise in consequence thereof. And according to Yale Law Journal, because we all love Yale, as lifelong environmentalist and Democrat Caucus House Majority Whip Alphonso Lopez could surely tell you himself, with or without his copious notes. Intriguingly, Massachusetts was the first state to adopt Rylands and never wavered after 1868. Go Red Sox. While New Hampshire was the most consistent rejecting state, boo New Hampshire. And before 1911, Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, Maryland, Oregon, and Wisconsin soon followed by New York, the great state of New York, the Empire State, and Texas wavered on Rylands at first in the midst of fears about dam collapses and floodgates of litigation opening up. And the Commonwealth of Virginia adopted Rylands in 1918, around the time of the war to end all wars. So Rylands, the period of history, Rylands v. Fletcher, in a Virginia for Lovers, is the law of the land, even brought during a period of history when nobody but a Democrat could be elected in Old Virginia, much like the 8th Congressional District in Arlington today. So if, like Delegate Alphonso Lopez, you are a lifelong environmentalist, then this video is just for you. We're talking about your laws, Fletcher v. Rylands, and why you need to pay attention to the debate on the pandemic response. It may be a Republican inquiry, but you have rights. At least in the progressive, inclusive, and beautifully diverse Black Lives Matter, Arlington, Virginia, where, according to the progressive Washington Post, Blue Virginia's war-hardened Arlington Democrats have held all of the reins of power for over 2 decades, deciding the outcome of all statewide elections. And where, according to the Arlington Sun-Gazette, a bookie wouldn't lay odds on a Republican picking up a seat, the possibility being so far out of reach. It is not at all surprising to find that at least 74% of the over 238,000 residents have decided to get the shot in the municipality, where over 74% over the age of 25 hold at least a baccalaureate degree. A community ranked 14th nationally for holders of advanced degrees and the home of the most government scientists. Indeed, the most educated by credential municipality in the Commonwealth, ranked 7th in the nation, behind the Garden State of New Jersey. And so, if one were to take an educated guess, not engaging in crazy conspiracy theories, then one would probably be safe in assuming, to a mathematical certainty, that the county of Arlington went overwhelmingly for Hillary Clinton in 2016. In fact, by first count, he even exceeded the vote count of Barack Obama by 7 points. Went overwhelmingly for Joe Biden in 2020, the pandemic in which over 14 million Virginians broke records in going to the polls. And Al Jazeera's most trusted voice during the global public health crisis for separating fact from fiction might be tantamount to a secular god. Especially finding that in this community, only a little above 32% profess any religious faith affiliation at all. Lowest incidence of a religious faith in the entire nation. In fact, around Clarendon, there is a person with an 18-foot statue of Satan in their backyard. Not that I have a problem with Satan, but it is a gaudy statue of Satan, and just for matters of taste, I might express some objection. But, of course, no objection in cosmopolitan Oregon. And one might therefore surmise that support for a zoonotic evolution that had, through a quite natural selection, managed to acquire gains of function to permit this pathogen to unite with the human host and give rise to a global pandemic might find rather wide support. Notwithstanding the fact that viruses and their virials are the most abundant biological particles in the world, that before a novel coronavirus, there were only a total of 219 viruses harmful to mankind, and that this is only the 7th human coronavirus in history. Total of 5 suddenly springing up between 2003 and 2005, around the period of SARS. And anyone who might disagree is simply denying the science. Are you stupid, man? Or as the esteemed Dr. Anthony Fauci had said after the outbreak that occurred at the Rose Garden ceremony regarding a super spreader event infecting a former president. The data speak for themselves. Certainly a personification for data lacking even one sentient thought. Simply do not speak. They have not mouths. But our visual learners certainly, and you know who you are, certainly get the picture. So, okay, Star Voyagers, Trekkies, sci-fi fans, UFO fanatics, living long and prospering. Let us now make like James Tiberius Kirk and boldly go where no man has yet gone before, looking for a green woman, delving into this complex question, now surely to befuddle the science deniers on the House Republican Committee, Vulcan morons, regarding the government health response. Mind meld powers on. Almighty ISIS, whatever. While I am not, Satan be with me, or whatever you want. While I am not quite certain as to whether this particular team building exercise, or shall we say game, is on the list of approved games at the Arlington Public School Board, Doctor of Education Francisco Duran presiding, and he is a Columbia University man. You knew. Nonetheless, to get to the bottom of this complexity, one might, as a logical step, do as the World Health Organization had commenced to do when they had commissioned a global study published in February 2021. As we all recall, a comprehensive forensic investigation into its origins, some 120 damn pages, even examining influenza-like illness or ILI and acute respiratory illness or ALI data samples dating back to September 2019 in China. This is all review for most of us, I am sure, that at least according to reporters at the Wall Street Journal had never occurred. How did they not get that memo? It's 120 damn pages long. Not to mention the joint mission study completed in February 2020, during which time a robust effort by 1,800 teams of at least 5 epidemiologists had carefully examined some 55,924 laboratory-confirmed cases in China and their close trace contacts, as is proper epidemiology. Over 19 times more cases than had yet been reported in the entire United States by mid-March 2020, when we were closing down an entire state of 8.4 million people, while in China they were reopening after only 1 month of lockdowns. And the name of the game this time is who was the last government scientist playing with the coronaviruses? Sounds like fun? Or do you feel like you are going to Ralph? Who's up for nosedive? I got my cotton. Okay, according to an email recovered from the esteemed Dr. Anthony Fauci, playing mailbox, dated February 1st, 2020, a Saturday, to his deputy at the NIAID. There was one particular report at that nation's leading expert in infectious disease and control had considered to be the most urgent for Dr. Q Alphonso to understand. And when a government scientist alerts another government scientist with an email marked important, it's not a booty call. And when he directs his deputy to read a science report so he could complete quite urgent tasks that very day, it sounds like it has to be rather important. Why would he do that? So what was in this rather important to understand have to be read and completed on a Saturday email, dated intriguingly March 30th, 2015, for this science report, a whole 5 years before the pandemic declaration, and titled curiously, "A SARS-like cluster of circulating bat coronaviruses shows potential for human emergence." A SARS-like circulating bat coronavirus shows potential for human emergence. You might sit there, out there scoping for babes and say, you know, that babe has potential. I think she's suddenly going to zoonotically evolve and come over to me. Or you could do something and try to get her number. Did they predict the pandemic? No, not exactly. But according to 15 scientists who had gone to college and gotten advanced degrees, including one Chinese gentleman named Xing Yiji from Key Laboratory of Special Pathogens and Biosafety. Special pathogens and biosafety. Wuhan Institute of Virology. That sounds familiar. Chinese Academy of Sciences, Wuhan, China. Near the wet market where the virus had zoonotically evolved. Double zoonotic evolution, according to Dr. Kristian G. Andersen of Scripps research. The emergence, is what they say, the emergence of severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus SARS-CoV, the first one, and Middle East respiratory syndrome, MERS-CoV, which erupted on the Arabian Peninsula, as we all know, and then later in South Korea, underscores the threat of cross-species events leading to outbreaks in humans. The emergence of severe coronaviruses underscore the threat of cross-species transmission events leading to outbreaks in humans. In other words, this happened recently before. Don't know why it suddenly started happening recently, but it did happen recently before, and recently it might soon occur again. That makes sense. And so we can give a silver star to these University of North Carolina and Chapel Hill scientists collaborating with the Wuhan Institute of Virology to quite accurately predict that in just a span of a short half-decade, we found a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic that apparently caught us all with our pants down. Now in a pandemic for 3 damn years. And this virus has surprised us before, according to Dr. Anthony Fauci. Why wasn't that a surprise? Further, this intentional international collaborative effort just 5 years before our current pandemic, inform us that in their report, an 8-page homework assignment that Dr. Fauci gave to his deputy on a Saturday, they had examined the disease potential, it's got potential, of a SARS-like virus, SHC-014-CoV, which is currently circulating in Chinese horseshoe bat populations. And you know, close only counts in horseshoes and thermonuclear war. And using the SARS-CoV reverse genetic system, we generated, go team, and characterized a chimeric virus. What does chimeric mean? That means that it's like two different species, two different types of animals. A chimeric virus expressing the spike of a bat coronavirus SHC-014 in a mouse-adapted SARS-CoV backbone. Yes, these scientists had the wonderful novel idea to take a coronavirus that had been circulating currently at that time in bats in China and had then decided, like geniuses, to do what? What did they do? They successfully cultivated their own SARS-like coronavirus to infect a poor mouse in a lab. How inhumane! It came out. M-I-C-K-E-Y. Why? Because we like you. But there is more. And all this contained in the bold print, one-paragraph abstract or summary that at least some people that are lazy will only read in this report. On the basis of these findings, we synthetically, like synthetic drugs, re-derived an infectious full-length SHC-014 recombinant virus, and demonstrate robust viral replication both in vitro and in vivo. And that's important. We'll get back to that. And our work suggests a potential risk of SARS-CoV re-emergence from viruses currently circulating in bat populations. They did what? This is where Zing from the Wuhan Institute of Virology takes on some particular significance, because those familiar with his works, and I know all of us in the community of the most government scientists are familiar with the esteemed Zing Yi, as even cited in the Origins report that had been prepared by the CDC in June 2020, which we all read, had as far back as 2012 managed to have successfully cultivated what? A SARS-like coronavirus at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So Zing Yi definitely had the expertise to assist these scientists at UNC Chapel Hill who are being exposed potentially for the first time to this SARS-like phenomenon and this danger that they all now feel it's important to cultivate their own SARS-like coronavirus in vivo or inside living cell tissue. But according to this report, this in vivo cultivation was not enough to prepare us for a pandemic that would happen in 5 years that found us with our pants down, still trying to figure out the novel coronavirus and its origins. For they had successfully cultivated a viable virus in vitro, or just in a petri dish, And as the intelligence community has suggested, during the robust 90-day investigation to redouble efforts to determine where in hell the origins of the novel coronavirus were found, even the director of national intelligence had coalesced around a potential scenario assigned a low to moderate probability that some scientists might, 1 in a trillion chance, no names, might accidentally permit a virus like this to, escape. And 5 years after this experiment, we have a pandemic. Do the data now speak for themselves? Well, at least according to the Patent Office, one John Barrick, who participated in this study along with two others, was so concerned about the possibility that the emergence of severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus SARS-CoV and Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome MERS-CoV underscores the threat of cross-species transmission events leading to outbreaks in humans, that they had immediately applied for a patent on methodologies to create a spike protein for this SARS-like coronavirus derived from a bat coronavirus then circulating in China to infect a mouse. And even with 5 years of preparation for a pandemic, somehow this important research failed to prevent a pandemic that the Wall Street Journal suggests has been attributed to the loss of over 15 million lives worldwide. And they say that is simply unacceptable. You think maybe the bats circulating in China caused this thing while they were sitting around playing with their coronavirus, and they haven't said anything in the entire pandemic about their research and how it was going to help us during this pandemic to find safe and effective vaccines and cures. Just sounds interesting. This John Barrett apparently was also claiming he was concerned about emerging coronaviruses in 2002. 2002? My God. And had obtained a patent again but this time on recombinant coronaviruses and their methodologies. Didn't we have recombinant coronaviruses involved inside our project right before the pandemic? Well, he was getting his ideas back in 2002, which certainly did not help during the current pandemic. But just 1 year later, what happened in 2003? We had the SARS outbreak in Hong Kong. No coronavirus outbreaks before 2003. All of a sudden, John Barrick is playing with coronaviruses in 2002, and in 2003, we have the SARS outbreak. I'm not saying it's coincidentally correlated. I'm not saying that he caused it, but he just happens to have a little pattern that's going on that's kind of intriguing. That's all I'm saying. And now we have this SARS-CoV-2. SARS-CoV outbreak in Hong Kong, 2003, year after he's playing with coronaviruses, and now SARS-CoV-2, a close cousin to SARS-CoV, and he was playing with coronaviruses. John Barrett has a very curious habit of playing with coronaviruses and applying for patents at the most convenient times. This we can all agree. And of course, for all of us who follow the scientists and the science, this material is simply all review, right? I'm not saying anything new. So, what are you waiting for? Che Guevara wannabe? Fight the power of Malcolm X Black Panther? You need an invitation, comrade? What happened to resist, sisters? Have you gone soft, brother? Just think what he did to that poor mouse back in 2015. That's worth a protest, at least. Run around Disneyland. Pretend you can fly. And under the progressive rule announced in Fletcher v. Rylands, adopted by a Virginia for Lovers in the year of the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918, the pandemic where we had the Liberty Loan Parade that the mayor of Alexandria forgot when he had a 2,000-member parade down the main business street, King Street, and in the beginning of the pandemic. That was intelligent. A defendant is held strictly liable for unnatural conditions brought upon the land for at least all foreseeable harms that may occur. And in America, the Wall Street Journal suggests that we have over 1 million dead Americans, and progressives don't say that this was a hoax. So therefore, ergo, we marched in streets during a pandemic with George Floyd. We even burned a church. We looted. We closed churches and businesses and schools because of this virus. Had some kids crying about not being able to have a prom or graduation. We broke records voting during this pandemic to get a president who denied the science out of the White House. And Governor Northam had reminded us on Labor Day before the early voting period that began. He said that that's what elections are for. Instead of his potatoes were fine. We staged walkouts over being denied restrooms when we came back to schools. Happy to be back in schools. Well, if you're happy to be back in schools, you should be upset that you were kept out of school because this John Barrett guy was playing with coronaviruses. We should have been doing other things. And And it didn't help us in this pandemic, obviously. And by the first anniversary of the pandemic, according to the Atlantic and Boston University, there were over 73,000 Negroes dead, not just one George Floyd, because of this coronavirus that scientists at the University of North Carolina were infecting mice with and getting patents. Come on, stop the violence. You know? Goodness gracious. You know? The coronavirus brutality. Mass incarceration of coronaviruses. This is so much bigger than cotton-picking games at the Arlington Public Schools. This is even bigger than missing middle housing in Arlington. And do you see Justin Fairfax taking this case? No, he's out there picking cotton with the NAACP. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? But how? Somehow you hesitate now. What, pussycat? Scared of a little coronavirus bigger than God? Are you a man or a mouse? Oh wait, I forgot. You're a feminist, sir. But what are your personal pronouns? But what is far more interesting here is that, and don't expect those Vulcan morons who deny the science and alchemy to figure this out, 28% of those Americans who believed in crackpot theories back in March 2020, and according to the Pew Research Center, as one might reasonably suspect, about half hadn't even completed college, for God's sake. Sounds like African American males. Only half of them get to college. Only 13% of them have a college degree. And the more education that you had, the less likely you were to believe that this virus did not naturally occur in nature through a zoonotic evolution. You know, educated, all the educated people. We had General Jody Daniels with the USAR. She said the vaccines are backed by the science because she was educated. She's a PhD. So grab that after-school Satan Club, champions of free speech. Grab Not Afraid to Burn in Hell, Don Byer, and the Free Thought Caucus, the atheist club in Congress. And let's demand this Ralph Barrett be brought into a bipartisan commission to answer some questions, because Lucy, he's got some splaining to do. This briefing is unclassified. This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.